Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here today. Today is the 13th, Wednesday, the 13th of March, 2024. Thank you for tuning in. Now, I'm going to tell you guys a little story. It's just a make-believe story. Picture there's a officer. He's went through officer training and everything else, and he's in the streets of some big city, maybe in the northeastern part of the United States. And somehow he gets himself in a situation where there's no other backup officers or anything. It's just him. And he's got a sidearm. And he's been trained how to use it and when to use it. Now, a whole bunch of young thugs come out of the alleyways, maybe 50 of them. And they're taunting him. Slowly but surely, they're getting worse and worse. They're challenging him. And they're not quitting. They're getting more and more aggressive. Well, we all kind of know what's going to happen in a situation like that. Eventually, they're going to push him to the point where it meets the requirements met by... He's going to think his life is threatened at a certain point. And he's going to resort to actions that he's been trained for in those kind of situations. Now, you're saying to yourself, what's the application of this story? Well, it's just a story. Now we're going to move on. We're going to start to take a look at the news now and see what's happening in the world right now. Ukraine-based Russian armed groups are claiming raids into Russia. They're actually... I don't know what term can I use for this. Can I call it an invasion? It says 3 Ukraine-based Russian paramilitary groups say they have crossed into Russia and are now fighting government troops there in Russia. It's the Freedom of Russia Legion, the Siberian Battalion. They posted videos purportedly showing they're fighting in Russian Belgorod and Kursk regions. It says an exiled Russian politician claimed 2 villages were now in control of so-called, in parentheses, liberation forces. Now, the Russian Defense Ministry has said that the breakthrough attempts were thwarted. It claims that more than 234 Ukrainian troops have been killed and several tanks have been destroyed in this incursion. This article came from BBC News. Now we're going to move on and take a look at more that's going on. And I would describe these things, as a pushing action between the West and the East. This article right here, these are ads. NATO fighter jets approved for nuclear weapons. Evidently this jet right here, which is, man, that's some sleek aerodynamic looking jet, I'll tell you what. The RRAF F-35A. This is a picture of it flying over Melbourne. Of course, other countries have their versions of the F-35. So these F-35s now are going to be equipped with some sort of, I guess it's a gravity bomb. It's a nuclear. They're nuclear capable aircraft. So what type of nuclear weapons are these aircraft carrying? The F-35 stealth jets operate by many NATO countries have been certified to carry. They're now certified to carry nuclear weapons, becoming the first 5th generation aircraft to be cleared for the fitting of such bombs. Lockheed Martin made the F-35A Joint Strike Fighter and has been approved to carry the B-6112 thermonuclear bomb. Now, Putin is warning. He's saying, hey, Russia's ready to use nuclear weapons if its sovereignty is threatened. He's come on the news, right? This is just very recently probably within the last 24 hours. It says Russian President Vladimir Putin speaks during an interview. Says President Vladimir Putin said Wednesday that Russia is ready to use nuclear weapons if its sovereignty or independence is threatened, issuing another blunt warning to the West just days ahead of an election which he is all but certain to secure another 6-year term. The Russian leader has repeatedly talked about his readiness to use nuclear weapons since invading Ukraine in February of 2022. The most such recent threats came as his State of the Nation address last month. He's warned the West. Now, if we move over here, these ads cover the whole blooming page, for crying out loud. I can't see anything. They're just Ukrainian drones damage Russian oil refineries in a second day of attacks. They're attacking deep inside Russia. Here's a picture. Smoke billows after Ukrainian SUB drone strikes a refinery amid Russia's attack on Ukraine. It says Moscow. Ukraine is striking Russian oil refineries in the second day of heavy drone attacks on Wednesday. I like that initial illustration I gave you guys about the police officer, and the mob that's attacking him. It's kind of a no-brainer in a situation like that. You kind of, if you're observing the situation, you can say to yourself, pretty much you can guess what's going to happen next and come to a logical conclusion. So what we see here is we see Ukraine striking Russian oil refineries deep inside, causing fire at Rosneft's biggest refinery. And Vladimir Putin said it was an attempt to disrupt his country's presidential election this week. And there's a refinery burning. Smoke billows after Ukraine SBU drone strikes a refinery amid Russian attacks on Ukraine. So Russia's attacking Ukraine at the same time. Russia and Ukraine have both used drones to strike critical infrastructure. So Ukraine is striking critical infrastructure in Russia. What else do we have here? Ukrainian drones and missiles strike Russian oil refineries. This comes from Al Jazeera. Ukraine continues to target Russia's oil and gas infrastructure. This is the heart of how Russia makes money. This oil and gas infrastructure inside Russia. And Ukraine is targeting it as best they can. Now, what about Ukraine receiving long-range missiles from different countries? I imagine that would aid them to attack deeper inside Russia. It says Ukraine has launched a barrage of drone and missile strikes against Russia, igniting 2 oil refineries in the overnight attacks, which reached deep into Russian territory. They hit refineries in towns hundreds of miles apart. And one of the towns they hit was Nizhny Novgorod and Oryol regions. Of course, there was no casualties reported, according to the regional office. Critical infrastructure strikes. So now we're talking about nuclear weapons right now. And a lot of people don't know this, so I got to go over it on my show to explain it. There's 2 different types of nuclear weapons out there. So not all nuclear weapons are the same, guys. There's tactical nuclear weapons. And here we can read about it on Wikipedia. A tactical nuclear weapon is what they call a non-strategic nuclear weapon, or an NSNW. It's a nuclear weapon that's designed to be used on the battlefields and in military situations, mostly with friendly forces in proximity and perhaps even uncontested friendly territory. Generally smaller in explosive power, these tactical nuclear weapons. They are defined in contrast to strategic nuclear weapons, which are designed mostly to be targeted at enemies' interior, far away from the war front. So these weapons, these tactical nuclear weapons, are designed to be used on the war front. They're not really designed They're smaller. They're not really designed to drop on cities. They're designed to drop on, say, on the battleground. Say an enemy is amassing a whole bunch of tanks in a certain area and they're planning on invading into a country or something like that. And they might use a tactical nuke in that case to blow up all the tanks on the battlefield. So these are the tactical ones. Now, there's another type, the strategic nuclear weapon. And these nuclear weapons are designed to go deep into a country, and the use of strategic nuclear weapons is what we often think of when we think of nuclear war. These are the ones that blow up everything, blow up humanity, and if both sides launches a complete attack with strategic nuclear weapons. Now, the strategic nuclear weapons were used back toward the end of World War II in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And there's a picture of the Fat Man, which was the drum dropped on Nagasaki, up above my head there. But they were small strategic weapons back then. Small in yield, or the size of them. They were more like the power of these tactical weapons now. These tactical nuclear weapons have the power, about the same power as those strategic weapons that were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But now the strategic nuclear weapons are much larger. The largest of which was the Tsar Bomba, which the Russians dropped. The Russians have the largest ones of these strategic nuclear weapons. A weapon so frightfully powerful that even if you were like the Tsar Bomba was so unbelievably powerful that you wouldn't be safe miles and miles and miles away from ground zero. But it was the biggest one. Now, most of the strategic weapons in the arsenal are not as big as the Tsar Bomba, thank goodness, because that thing was absolutely massive that the Russians dropped. I think it was like, was it 50 or 100 megatons? I can't remember now. A megaton is 1,000,000 tons of TNT, by the way. Most of them now that they have in their arsenals are less than 1 megaton. A common size is in around 300 kilotons, is a common size for a strategic nuclear weapon now. And around 300, maybe 500. 300 to 500, along in that area right. Whereas the tactical nuclear weapons, their size is much smaller again than that. I think the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombs were somewhere in the order of about 13 kiloton, and these tactical nuclear weapons they have now are like, I don't know, anywhere between 25, maybe 50 kiloton. They're stronger than the nuclear weapons that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki by quite a little bit, but they're not near as strong as these strategic nuclear weapons in the strategic nuclear weapon arsenals. But they make up for it in volume. Because even though most of them are like maybe 300, 500 kiloton, they've got so many of them now. The Russians have like 6,000 or close to 6,000 nuclear weapons, and America has almost as many, a little bit less, not quite as many as Russia, but tremendous power if they use all of their nuclear arsenals. So what I'm thinking is and the nations have discussed this, the use of tactical nuclear weapons without it expanding into a full-blown strategic nuclear war. They've talked about that. They've had discussions about that. They've written papers on it and stuff. Whether that's a practical idea or not, I don't know. Because once nuclear weapons start to be used, then the countries will go on their alert system. They go on a certain alert system. It's called DEFCON. And it goes, when things are good, I think the DEFCON number's higher, and then when things get more dangerous, the DEFCON gets lower and lower until it gets down to a certain point where they start to think about things like a strategic first strike, It's a very dangerous situation. Any nuclear weapon use is a very dangerous situation, but a tactical nuclear weapon does not necessarily mean that it's going to go into a full-blown nuclear war. Not necessarily, and that's the point I'm trying to get across. It could or it couldn't. It just depends on whether cooler heads prevail at that point. But we're moving toward something right now that's a very dangerous period in time because of this ongoing war situation in the world. Not just the war in Ukraine, which has a great deal of potential, but we got a war going on with the Houthis. We got another war going on with the Israel's at war. These are two of the big wars out there, right? But we have tensions rising with China in the South China Sea. I mean, there's a lot of tension there right now. It hasn't developed into a war, but I mean, got to keep our eye on that, guys. Now we're going to get in and take a look at the markets now. 24.39 today for silver. So what we're seeing is precious metals is holding up above $24 on silver, and gold today we're seeing at 21.66. So they're holding their own on these alternatives to the dollar. So gold's up $9 today at 21.66. If we're taking a look at cryptocurrency today, we're seeing that Bitcoin is really holding its own. It's almost $73,000. 72,886, and it's really holding its own good. Now that's a feat for Bitcoin, and it's an indicator for me. I think it's got more room to run. See, Bitcoin's one of those things where it moves 10 times faster than any other market. It's always been that way. It always moves at about 10x speed. So 10 days on the Dow Jones is equal to 1 day on Bitcoin as far as movement's concerned. It's a fast mover, if it's holding that up at around $72,000, what it means is the Bitcoin price is getting set to a higher level, and people are getting used to it now at this new high price. This is a bullish indicator for me, for now. 3,983 for Ethereum, and XRP is at 68 cents. Now the Dow Jones Industrial Average today, we're looking at up 155 points at 39,161. I'll tell you honestly, guys, now this is just me. Just me theorizing. Just me, what would you call it? Just me, just my idea on the whole thing. So don't take it to heart or anything like that, what I'm going to say next. But I'm kind of predicting that probably within the next 6 months, that red lines in this situation in Ukraine, because of the way the war is going in Ukraine right now, it's like a disintegrating slide. It's like it's like a guy going down a slide, and the slide is covered with sandpaper. I mean, this is bad. It's bad situation developing over there. I'm kind of predicting that now this is just my personal opinion. Don't take it to heart, but I think we're going to see the use of a tactical nuke. I think it's heading in that direction. With them strapping these tactical nukes on these jets and stuff over there, and tensions and what can I say? And if such a thing does happen, the world's going to wake up. It's going to be a sudden shock awake. It's going to be like, oh my God, what just happened. The world will wake up. Everybody out there will wake up. It's like they're in some sort of a dream state right now where they're not paying any attention to any of this kind of stuff and they're just too busy in their lives. But believe me, a headline article comes on there and they see the mushroom cloud because they've all been trained. They learn when they're very young that nuclear war means end of humanity. And that's when that happens, if we see that happen, there's going to be a sudden jolt of fear, unlike anything we've witnessed ever amongst the whole of humanity. It'll be the shot that rung out around the world. A gut-wrenching fear for everybody, and people react to fear, and so anything could happen at that point in time. If we see that happen, it could yield one of two things could happen directly thereafter. One, it could be an end to the war. Or, in other words, some sort of a peace deal. And in fact, that's probably the most likely thing that would happen. Or the second thing that could happen is it could directly go right into a strategic nuclear war and blow the hell out of everything. But it would be a world-changing event, as big as when they first landed on the moon. It would be big, if that happens. Anyway, here we go. Crude oil today is up $1.93 at $79.49. That's quite a big jump, but it seems to be hovering around $80 for the last little while, and it's just been up and down around that $80 price range. You can see going back quite a little ways here. It's been hovering, doing the same thing, going sideways basically, up and down like a saw blade. Taking a look at bonds and rates today, we're looking at rising yields. Not a lot. U.S. 10 years risen 2.9 basis points at 4.18, and the U.S. 30 years at 4.35, and it's risen 3.8 basis points. And finishing off with the U.S. dollar index, 102.83. It's like I've told you guys, this dangerous part of a war is near the beginning and when it starts to come near the closure, and when a winner is going to be defined. That's the danger part. Because the countries involved, if they're starting to lose, they get desperate. And that's kind of a situation. And that desperacy can lead to, all kinds of things that lead to dangerous situations. When a war, a lot of people aren't paying attention to this war in Ukraine. The reason why it's been droning on and on and on. The middle part of this. This is like a sandwich that's had a lot of meat put in the middle, Big stack of meat in the middle. But we've worked our way through that meat in the middle, and now we started with bread on one side, and now we're starting to get to the bread on the other side. Like, in other words, the nothing lasts forever. The war in Ukraine will not last forever. There's going to be a beginning, and there's always a beginning, and there's always a closure to these things. And like they say, that's the danger point, is those two spots, near the beginning and near the closure. Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe. Give me that thumbs up, and you guys have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.